Fisher, and I'm here to talk to you about how prostitution should not be legal. The act of prostitution is a violation of human rights. The goal of the government should be to protect the safety of individuals. Humans who sell themselves for money will always be seen as objects to their clients.
We've all likely heard these arguments against legalized prostitution. The fact is that the arguments fail to consider a more pragmatic approach. I've always been interested in criminology, especially when criminalization is based on moral grounds. And because most adults engage in sex, I think we're all on some level able to voice a credible opinion on prostitution. I've always taken an interest when morality and law are intertwined. And in the case of prostitution, I have researched many of the arguments against legalization. So today, I'd like to tell you why prostitution should be legalized, because arguments against legalization that assume the moral ground may not be very moral as originally thought. That legalized prostitution improves conditions that prostitutes now face in a criminalized environment, and that environments where prostitution is legalized exemplify the very intended results that prohibition promised. First, let's examine the consequences of criminalized prostitution. Specifically, the myth that prostitution directly contributes to the modern-day slave trade. In reality, illegalized prostitution directly contributes to the modern-day slave trade. Barbara G. Bentz, a professor in the Department of Sociology at the University of Nevada, has been conducting research in Nevada's illegal brothels for over 15 years. She has found no evidence of trafficking in legal brothels. Not only has no evidence of trafficking been found, but employees of the legal brothels felt safer, as Brent explains, largely because the police, employers, and co-workers were there to protect them. This is a testament that legalized and regulated prostitution can keep employees of brothels much safer than in criminal networks of gangs, traffickers, and pimps. Let's take a closer look into the incidences of rape occurring in environments with legalized prostitution. This brings us to the myth that prohibition of prostitution has decreased incidences of rape. Numerous studies indicate that when prostitution is legal, incidences of rape decrease. Linda Reichman, contributor to an article titled "Psychological and Sociological Research and the Decriminalization or Legalization of Prostitution," states that a study conducted in Queensland showed a 149% increase in the rate of rape when legal brothels were closed in 1959, while other offenses against the persons by males were increased only 49%. According to a post by Max Ehrenfreund via the WashingtonPost.com, when Rhode Island accidentally legalized prostitution, rape decreased sharply. This might indicate that sexual tension precedes rape, and that legalized prostitution lessens the incidences of rape by acting as a sexual outlet. This turns our attention to the morality prescribed to the campaign for illegalized prostitution. If the results of legalizing prostitution emulate the intended results of illegalizing prostitution, then we ought to re-examine why prostitution is criminalized in the first place. The very means by which the criminalization of prostitution is enforced seems to produce the opposite results, results that were believed to be only produced from legalized prostitution. Lastly, let's examine the aspect of morality, specifically the myth that money for sex is immoral and prostitutes will always be seen as objects to their clients, as according to our video presentation. In reality, the objectification of a prostitute is not contingent upon an exchange of money. Prostitution does not necessitate objectification. If the moral judgments as to the issue of prostitution, varying per individual and society at large, do not testify to the validity of ethical subjectivism or moral relativism, they at least give us reason to acknowledge that arriving to the conclusion of prostitution's alleged immorality is not immediate, nor is it certain. Regardless, a counter-moral judgment may read that money for sex is not immoral, or money for sex is moral. Its morality may depend on consequences, on virtue, intentionality, etc. As we are dealing with the law, examining the consequences of legalized versus criminalized prostitution may be of utmost importance as it relates to society and the consequences entailed. And with that, the suitable theory of consequentialism, as well as many other moral frameworks, certainly have the capacity to judge criminalized prostitution as immoral. Preventing prostitutes the safe, regulated environment that legalization ensures takes on the pragmatic approach of constructively reacting to the issue of prostitution, rather than destructively attempting to hinder the inevitable. By now, you know the many arguments in favor of keeping prostitution illegal are actually counterproductive to the results to which they aspire. So in review, legalizing prostitution entails regulation, which then, in turn, keeps the employees vastly safer, away from the grasp of human traffickers that are prevalent in the environment of prohibited prostitution. Legalizing prostitution has shown to greatly reduce incidences of rape, and the very morality which we prescribe to keeping prostitution illegal may actually contradict itself in practice. Once you begin to consider the position of legalizing prostitution, you may actually then find that both sides intend on producing a safer environment for citizens, but that one side specifically focuses on the reality rather than on mere ideology. So if you are against legalizing prostitution, make sure you know the reality of the consequences that this prohibition has created.